Julian's arrogant laugh echoed through the lobby of the Plaza Hotel. He pointed mockingly at the grease-stained leather jacket beside Maya. He sneered loudly, calling him a penniless mechanic who belonged in Brooklyn. Suddenly, 10 armored Maybachs surrounded the grand entrance of the hotel. Their heavy engines roared with a terrifying, predatory authority. Julian had not just insulted a worker, he had challenged Manhattan's ruthless king. Maya Lin sat alone on her worn couch in her cramped Brooklyn rental apartment. She stared numbly at the dark sapphire dress, hanging uselessly against her closet door. At 25, she was a brilliant aerodynamic design engineer with a sharp intellect. She had spent 3 exhausting years building Vance Capital from the ground up. She poured her entire life savings into Julian's startup to secure their future. The fragile illusion of their romantic partnership shattered 7 days before their scheduled wedding. Julian ended their engagement through a cold, brutal 3-minute phone call while she worked. He showed no remorse for breaking his promises after taking every dollar she owned. Instead, he ruthlessly traded her for Victoria, a razor-thin Wall Street heiress with a trust fund. Julian sneered that a curvy Brooklyn girl could never fit into his new lifestyle. But the real betrayal ran far deeper than a cancelled wedding and a broken heart. Julian quietly erased Maya's name from the company's lucrative aerodynamic patent filings at the office. He claimed her brilliant engineering algorithms as his own corporate genius to impress investors. How could she have trusted a man who drained her mind and stole her work? He left her struggling with unpaid bills while celebrating his rapid rise in Manhattan. Surrounded by scattered wedding invitations, a sharp, acidic rage replaced Maya's heavy grief. Julian foolishly assumed her quiet nature meant she would passively accept his cruel disrespect. He forgot that the mind he exploited was capable of calculating devastating retaliatory precision. Maya wiped her tears, stood tall, and swore he would pay for every lie. Julian believed he won by stepping on her back to reach Wall Street's peak. But Maya was no longer the naive woman who suffered quietly behind corporate doors. She was a master engineer preparing to dismantle his stolen empire piece by piece. The morning rain washed over the cobblestone streets of DUMBO, casting reflective shadows against the historic brick warehouses beneath the Manhattan Bridge. Maya Lin pulled her coat tight against the damp Brooklyn chill as she approached an unmarked, rustic industrial garage. This cavernous workshop housed her prized possession, a classic 1967 Ford Mustang V8 that she had painstakingly restored herself. It was the single asset Julian Vance couldn't steal from her, because her late grandfather had registered the pink slip directly in her name. She pushed open the heavy steel door, greeted by the rich scent of high-octane fuel, leather, and premium motor oil. Why was this place so quiet, despite the massive state-of-the-art machinery lining the dark concrete floor? She stepped carefully across the polished floorboards, her dark heels clicking softly through the ambient silence of the warehouse. From beneath the lifted chassis of a matte black custom vehicle, a man stepped out into the dim overhead lighting. He wore a fitted dark shirt under a rugged, grease-stained leather jacket that stretched taut across impossibly broad shoulders. He stood over 6 feet tall, possessing an aura of predatory stillness that instantly commanded the vast room. Dark, neatly trimmed hair framed a sharp jawline covered in a dark shadow of stubble, while eyes as dark as midnight locked onto her. He slowly unwrapped a rag from his large, calloused hands, wiping away dark grease without breaking unyielding eye contact. Maya felt her pulse jump involuntarily as he towered over her, radiating a quiet, dangerous authority that made the air feel suddenly thin. Maya bracingly prepared herself for the usual condescending glances she received from men in automotive and finance industries. She was accustomed to arrogant Wall Street traders who dismissed her intelligence while making subtle, patronizing remarks about her generous, plush curves. But as the stranger stepped closer, there was no pity or shallow judgment in his intense, burning gaze. His eyes swept slowly from her dark sapphire wrap dress down to her full hips, drinking in her striking appearance with raw, unadulterated appreciation. Did he know how intimidating his dark presence was to an unexpected visitor? His low, gravelly baritone vibrated smoothly through the cavernous shop. "You must be Maya Lin," he murmured, his voice sounding like warm velvet over polished granite. "I'm Vince Moretti." Now, Listen carefully, because what happened next completely redefined how Maya viewed men in this city. Vince walked her over to a restored Mustang, where the massive engine block sat gleaming under bright tungsten spotlights. Maya leaned over the fenders, her sharp engineering instincts instantly taking control as she examined the newly installed custom intake manifold. She noticed a subtle modification in the air-fuel ratio configuration and raised a dark eyebrow in sharp curiosity. You recalibrated the fuel injectors for higher air velocity at 4,000 RPM, she stated precisely, looking up into his dark eyes. Most mechanics would have choked the air intake, but you optimized the fluid dynamics for maximum downforce. Vince's dark eyes flared with a sudden, scorching flash of genuine intrigue as he rested one heavy hand on the metal hood. He handed her a steaming paper cup of black coffee, his rough fingers briefly brushing against hers and sending an electric current straight down her spine. "I don't run an ordinary repair shop, Miss Lynn," Vince said softly, leaning his heavy frame against the workbench while watching her face intently. "I appreciate precision, and your engineering blueprints for this engine block were absolute perfection." For 3 long years, Julian had systematically buried her brilliant mind in his shadow while taking credit for her complex aerodynamic calculations. Yet here stood a rugged mechanic in a grease-stained jacket who recognized her genius within 5 minutes of looking at her work. Could this terrifying stranger actually see her true worth better than anyone else ever had? Vince didn't treat her like a fragile woman or an insecure corporate assistant. He treated her like an intellectual equal, listening intently as she explained her advanced computational fluid dynamics models. He listened to her articulate explanation with an absolute, unwavering devotion that made her heart hammer wildly against her ribs. But the real secret was that Vince Moretti wasn't just observing her technical, brilliant mind. He was studying her fierce, resilient spirit. He noticed the lingering shadow of deep betrayal hiding behind her proud posture and knew someone had recently wronged her deeply. "This machine is ready to dominate any track in New York," Vince murmured, his dark gaze locking onto her lips with possessive intensity. "And if anyone ever tries to sabotage your work again, you bring them to me." Maya left the garage with her engine roaring smoothly under her command, yet her mind remained completely fixated on the mysterious mechanic. She had survived her heartbreak, but the heavy, possessive warmth in Vince's dark eyes promised that her quiet life in Brooklyn was over. 2 days later, a thick gold-embossed envelope arrived at Maya's Brooklyn apartment. Julian had deliberately dispatched a formal invitation to his engagement gala at the Plaza Grand Ballroom. He desperately wanted to publicly humiliate her before Manhattan's financial elite. He wrongly assumed she would hide away and cry over her ruined future. Maya stared at the gilded card with calm, unyielding pride. She refused to cower in the shadows like a defeated victim. Instead, she chose to confront the poisonous world that had stolen her work. She would show them that her self-worth was not for sale. She selected a breathtaking dark emerald silk gown that draped her generous curves with regal elegance. She carefully smoothed the fabric over her full hips, radiating pure confidence. She invited Vince to accompany her, knowing his presence would shatter Julian's shallow ego. Rain trickled softly down the arched glass windows of the Plaza Hotel as their vehicle arrived. Inside the grand ballroom, massive crystal chandeliers illuminated a sea of gold-plated socialites. Chilled flutes of Moet and Chandon sparkled on silver trays carried by attentive waiters. The Gold Coast investors floated through the room with sharp, superficial vanity. They whispered behind manicured hands while flaunting their inherited fortunes. Did these arrogant Wall Street traders truly believe wealth gave them permission to destroy others? Maya glided through the ornate double doors with her chin held high. Beside her walked Vince, casually rejecting the traditional black tie dress code. He proudly wore his rugged, grease-stained leather jacket with dark, predatory authority. Whispers rippled through the ballroom as attendees noticed the striking couple. Shocked gasps echoed against the gold-leaf ceilings at the sight of a rough mechanic inside Manhattan's premier venue. Yet Vince walked with the deliberate grace of a man who owned the entire block. Here's where it gets interesting. Julian stepped down from the elevated VIP alcove, holding Victoria's thin arm with supreme arrogance. His dark eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure as he prepared his public trap. Julian deliberately raised his champagne glass, drawing the undivided attention of 200 wealthy guests. He intended to turn Maya's presence into a pathetic public spectacle. The air in the ballroom turned ice cold as he took his first aggressive step toward them. Maya stood her ground alongside Vince, refusing to retreat from the hostile gazes surrounding them. Her heart beat with steady power, ready for whatever game Julian planned to play. Julian smirked arrogantly as he stood under the glowing crystal chandeliers. He swirled his glass of vintage champagne with careless Wall Street pride. He looked down at Vince's rugged leather jacket with supreme contempt. "Did you stray out of your filthy grease pit in DUMBO, mechanic?" Julian sneered. "Can you even afford a single glass of this expensive Moet?" Julian asked mockingly. Surrounding Wall Street investors erupted into loud, condescending laughter. Victoria tapped Julian's arm approvingly, completely delighted by Maya's public embarrassment. The wealthy crowd watched the humiliating spectacle eagerly. Maya felt a wave of hot fury rush through her chest at his words. She took an aggressive step forward, ready to tear Julian's reputation to shreds. But Vince extended his large, calloused hand, gently resting his heavy palm against her waist. His touch was firm, grounding, and absolute in its calm authority. Why would a true apex predator bother answering the pathetic barking of a dog? Vince smiled with chilling composure, his dark eyes void of any fear or hesitation. He slowly unbuttoned the cuff of his dark leather work jacket without speaking. He rolled back the heavy leather sleeve before the astonished crowd. Vince exposed his thick forearm to the glittering ballroom light. Beneath a subtle streak of dark motor oil rested an extraordinary piece of horological engineering. It was a custom, double-faced Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime worth $500,000. White gold and complex subdials gleamed brilliantly under the chandeliers. Anyone in Manhattan's upper financial tier instantly recognized that legendary timepiece. A sudden, stunned silence descended upon the surrounding circle of hedge fund directors. They stared at the mechanic's wrist in complete, unadulterated disbelief. Here's where it gets interesting, because Julian was far too blind to read the room. How could an arrogant traitor fail to notice the terror around him? Julian opened his mouth to deliver another insult. The harsh words died in his dry throat. Vince reached into his inner jacket pocket and retrieved a sleek satellite phone. The heavy silver ring on his finger caught the chandelier light as he tapped the screen. He brought the encrypted device to his ear with calm, lethal authority. The entire ballroom fell dead silent, awaiting his next move. "Shut down maritime customs clearance for all cargo vessels linked to Vance Capital," Vince commanded. His low, gravelly baritone cut through the quiet room like a sharpened blade. "Freeze every shipping container arriving at the New York and New Jersey port facilities immediately." He instructed his logistics team to execute a full financial lien against Julian's accounts. If their executive team resists, terminate their global maritime insurance within 60 seconds, Vince added. He ended the call and casually glanced down at his ticking watch face. "You now have exactly 3 minutes before your board receives the notice," Vince murmured softly. Julian attempted to force a confident laugh, but the sound caught in his throat. Suddenly, Julian's luxury smartphone began vibrating violently against his thigh with frantic urgency. Was his precious Wall Street empire crumbling into dust before his very eyes? The 3-minute countdown began ticking away like a silent execution timer in the ballroom. Guests exchanged bewildered, anxious glances as Julian frantically pulled out his phone. His hands trembled violently as he unlocked the glowing screen. He stared at the screen in sheer horror, reading emergency alerts from his partners. His chief financial officer was spamming his inbox with desperate messages regarding frozen credit lines. Every cargo ship carrying his assets was officially impounded at sea. Vance Capital was defaulting on its loans in real time. Vince remained perfectly still, watching Julian's arrogant facade shatter into pieces. He casually wrapped his heavy arm around Maya's waist, pulling her flush against his chest. Maya leaned into his heat, feeling a thrill of absolute power course through her veins. Julian looked up from his phone with a face as white as chalk. His former arrogance was completely replaced by raw, suffocating terror. He finally realized that the man in the mechanic's jacket held his entire destiny in his hands. Maya held her head high, ready for the final collapse. The heavy glass doors of the plaza swung open as cold rain swept into the foyer. 10 matte black armored escalades pulled up along Fifth Avenue in precision formation. A dozen hulking security guards in dark suits instantly secured every entrance. The managing director of the plaza sprinted frantically across the marble floor. He bypassed Julian completely and bowed deeply before the dark stranger. The manager's hands trembled violently as he recognized the dangerous billionaire. Vince did not offer a polite word or a friendly smile. He reached inside his leather jacket and extracted a formal document. He casually placed a certified $10 million cashier's check onto a tray. "I am purchasing this entire event and venue right now," Vince declared. "Cancel Vance Capital's reservation and erase their names from the registry." The terrified manager bowed repeatedly and eagerly accepted the massive payment. Julian stood frozen in sheer shock as his Gala vanished instantly. Victoria gasped loudly, clinging to Julian's arm as guards moved closer. Julian choked out a desperate protest, but his words were ignored. Vince looked down at the disgraced couple with cold, absolute authority. "Throw these people out," Vince commanded his security detail sharply. "They are trespassing on my property, so remove them right now." 4 massive guards grabbed Julian and Victoria by their designer collars. They dragged the screaming pair across the grand ballroom floor. The guards threw them unceremoniously out into the pouring rain. Cold Manhattan rain soaked through their expensive silk and custom suits. The Wall Street elite watched through the glass as Julian collapsed. He pounded his wet fists onto the pavement in absolute ruin. Inside the warm ballroom, Vince wrapped his heavy arm around Maya's waist. Maya held her head high, leaning against his solid chest. She watched her abusive ex-fiancé suffer the ultimate public defeat. Every lingering shadow of her past insecurity vanished in that moment. She was no longer a helpless victim facing an arrogant enemy. She stood victorious beside the undisputed master of the city. The ballroom erupted into eager whispers as guests praised her beauty. Vince looked into her eyes with deep, fierce, unyielding devotion. The sweet taste of total revenge was better than she imagined. Outside the heavy glass windows of the plaza, relentless Manhattan rain washed over Fifth Avenue. Inside the grand ballroom, the atmosphere remained heavy, with a suffocating, breathless silence. Julian knelt on the cold pavement outside, staring frantically at his glowing smartphone screen. Dozens of urgent red notifications flooded his display from senior corporate board members. His panicked father screamed through the speaker about an unexpected financial disaster at their Wall Street headquarters. The clearing bank had just issued an automated notice of immediate loan default. Every institutional investor was pulling their capital from Vance Capital's primary trading accounts. Julian's hands shook uncontrollably as he listened to the chaos unfolding across the phone line. How could a prominent financial firm collapse into complete ruin within 3 short minutes? The wealthy socialites, watching through the glass windows, gasped at Julian's sudden humiliation. Vince stood calmly at the center of the room, his massive frame radiating cold authority. He casually adjusted his leather sleeves, ignoring the hedge fund managers whispering his name. But the real secret was that the DUMBO repair workshop was merely a quiet sanctuary. Vincenzo Moretti was the supreme leader of an elite syndicate controlling every commercial shipping lane. His ruthless power dominated the entire northeastern supply chain, moving billions in freight annually. For several months, Vance Capital had been secretly drowning beneath a mountain of debt. Julian's family desperately required a $50 million emergency credit line to avoid public bankruptcy. They had spent grueling weeks begging Apex Global Holdings, a private equity firm, for rescue funds. Julian had proudly boasted to his arrogant associates that the loan package was fully finalized. He was far too foolish to investigate the offshore entity controlling Apex Global's capital. Now listen carefully to this part, because Vince was preparing the ultimate financial counterstrike. Vince swiped his satellite phone screen, opening the master credit contract governing Apex Global's investments. He calmly tapped the encrypted device, revoking the pending credit facility with immediate effect. Vince also activated strict cross-default clauses across every international lending institution handling Julian's corporate accounts. Was there any possible escape for a family that had crossed the Moretti syndicate? Notice of credit termination is officially confirmed, Vince declared softly to the silent room. The $50 million financial lifeline vanished instantly, leaving Vance Capital exposed to immediate liquidation. Without that critical cash injection, Julian's family firm was completely unable to meet its morning margin calls. Federal regulators automatically flagged the company for mandatory Chapter 11 involuntary bankruptcy proceedings by midnight. Every asset Julian owned was legally frozen before he could even process the shock. Here's where it gets interesting. As the financial panic swept through Wall Street trading desks, high-frequency automated trading algorithms instantly shorted Vance Capital's remaining stock on the exchange floor. Their corporate market valuation plummeted to absolute zero before the evening gala even concluded. Major institutional creditors seized their luxury corporate vehicles, private jets, and prime Manhattan real estate. Julian's father suffered a severe medical emergency as federal marshals arrived to lock their doors. Through the rain-streaked glass doors, Julian dropped his luxury phone onto the pavement in despair. His knees buckled under the weight of total ruin as rain soaked his expensive suit. He watched the ballroom guests turn their backs on him without offering a single gesture of pity. The elite socialites eagerly raised their crystal glasses to toast Vince Moretti and Maya. The entire Vance legacy was permanently erased from New York high society within a single hour. Maya stood tall beside the terrifying mafia leader, her heart swelling with fierce pride. She felt an intoxicating rush of absolute satisfaction while watching her abusive ex-fiancé suffer. Vince wrapped his heavy arm securely around her waist, pulling her close against his side. He didn't just defend her dignity against an arrogant man who had stolen her work. Vince systematically annihilated Julian's entire lineage to ensure he could never hurt her again. The sweet taste of total vengeance washed over Maya as the ballroom applauded their power. She looked up into Vince's dark, possessive eyes, seeing pure devotion reflected in his gaze. The man in the grease-stained jacket was not just an ordinary mechanic from Brooklyn. He was the undisputed king of the city, and she was standing proudly at his side. Their dangerous journey together was just beginning, but her enemies were already crushed beneath their feet. The room remained captivated by the sheer elegance of Maya's transformation beside her formidable partner. Former critics who had mocked her now whispered compliments about her sharp intellect and beauty. Vince smiled darkly, his calloused thumb gently caressing the silk fabric at her hip. He had proven to all of Manhattan that no one mistreated Maya Lin without facing total destruction. Together, they owned the room, the night, and the future of the Moretti Empire. The heavy Maybach glided smoothly through the iron gates of a private estate in Long Island. Deep ocean waves crashed against the dark stone cliffs as Vince guided her inside. Soaring vaulted ceilings and antique marble fireplaces welcomed them with quiet, comforting luxury. Did she ever imagine that one turbulent evening in Manhattan could alter her future so completely? Maya walked across the mahogany floors, her dark emerald dress trailing gracefully behind her. Vince led her past the grand staircase into his private study, overlooking the ocean. He walked toward a heavy wall safe hidden behind an ornate mahogany bookcase without hesitation. The dimly lit room smelled faintly of cedarwood, rich leather, and aged scotch. Vince unlocked the heavy steel door, extracting a thick binder filled with confidential technical documents. Maya gasped in complete shock as she recognized her own precise handwriting on the diagrams. These were her original race car engine designs and official USPTO patent filings. Julian had secretly stolen these exact calculations to secure his fraudulent corporate loans. But the real secret is that Vince had been watching her brilliant mind for months. Vince stepped closer, his massive frame towering over her in the quiet study light. He reached out, his calloused fingers gently lifting her chin toward his dark gaze. Julian was a fool who used your mind without understanding its true value. His dark eyes burned with an absolute terrifying devotion that made her body tremble. I didn't bring you here tonight simply because you are breathtaking, Tesoro, he whispered. Your brilliant mind built those advanced aerodynamic engine formulas completely from scratch. You possess a rare engineering talent that no Wall Street money can ever buy. Vince walked over to his dark desk, opening a leather portfolio before her eyes. He slid a sleek gold fountain pen across the polished mahogany surface toward her. The document was an official appointment for Chief Executive Officer at Moretti Motorsports. "You designed the most efficient racing engines in the entire nation," Vince stated softly. "It is finally time you take full ownership over your brilliant technical creations." Maya stared at the contract, feeling tears of pure joy prick her eyes. For 3 long years, Julian had forced her to hide in the shadows while taking credit. Now, the most dangerous man in New York was offering her complete power. She held her head high, gripping the gold pen with absolute, unshakable confidence. Maya signed her name on the executive agreement without a single moment's hesitation. Vince wrapped his heavy arm around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest. "I don't just offer protection from weak men who tried to diminish you. I am placing an entire automotive empire directly into your brilliant hands." Maya rested her hands on his solid chest, kissing him back with fierce devotion. She had finally reclaimed her stolen glory beside the undisputed king of Manhattan. The painful shadows of her past vanished completely beneath the promise of their power. 2 weeks later, the glass pavilion at the Javits Center in Manhattan vibrated with electric media excitement. The prestigious New York International Auto Show had assembled thousands of prominent industry leaders and global reporters. Julian Vance stood near an obscure back display, frantically trying to pitch his stolen engine concept to investors. His family firm was drowning in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, yet his stubborn arrogance refused to accept defeat. He desperately believed that slick public relations spin could somehow obscure his mounting financial ruin and scandal. Could an unrepentant fraudster truly hope to salvage his reputation by showcasing stolen engineering on national television? Suddenly, the auditorium doors swung open as a blinding flash of camera bulbs lit the main concourse floor. Whispers rippled across the audience of Wall Street Journal reporters as a striking figure walked onto the stage. Maya Lin appeared breathtaking in a tailored ivory power suit designed to accentuate her regal, lush curves. Her confident posture radiated unyielding executive authority as she stepped gracefully toward the central podium under spotlights. Behind her, a massive display illuminated her name as Chief Executive Officer of Moretti Motorsports. Julian turned deathly pale, his hands shaking as he recognized the brilliant woman he had once ruthlessly discarded. Here's where it gets interesting, because Maya had not returned to Manhattan simply to present a new vehicle. She approached the central stage with the calm, predatory grace of an executive who owned the entire building. Julian aggressively pushed through the photographers, shouting frantic accusations that she was an ungrateful former employee. Maya didn't flinch at his desperate shouting, looking down at him with cool, aristocratic pity from the stage. She casually raised one manicured hand, signaling her legal team to override the venue's main broadcast screens. Did Julian honestly believe his pathetic lies could withstand the crushing weight of verified digital evidence? Within seconds, every high-definition monitor throughout the Javits Center projected certified USPTO patent documentation and forensic audits. The digital schematics displayed original CAD engineering blueprints, bearing Maya's encrypted cryptographic timestamp from 3 years prior. Clear evidence revealed how Julian had systematically forged corporate signatures to unlawfully transfer her technology to his firm. The gathered reporters gasped in shock, instantly turning their heavy camera lenses away from Julian's empty display booth. Wall Street Journal journalists began aggressively taking photographs of the damning documentation, flashing across the main walls. Julian stood frozen in horrified silence as his stolen reputation dissolved entirely before the international automotive industry. Now listen carefully to this part, because the legal strategy was executed with absolute mathematical and forensic precision. Maya pointed directly at Julian, her clear voice echoing powerfully through the sound system across the packed auditorium. Julian Vance stole these racing engine patents while systematically attempting to erase my name from corporate records. Today, Moretti Motorsports is filing a formal federal lawsuit for $300 million in property damages. The crowd erupted into stunned chatter as prominent venture capitalists instantly canceled their scheduled meetings with Vance Capital. Julian backed away toward the exits, realizing his desperate attempt to salvage his career had turned into annihilation. But the real secret was that Maya had already coordinated her counterstrike directly with federal law enforcement. 4 federal marshals, accompanied by detectives from the district attorney's office, marched firmly through the press crowd. They surrounded Julian near the service exit, cutting off his panicked attempt to escape into Manhattan's streets. The lead federal agent produced a signed arrest warrant, reading him his rights for grand larceny and fraud. Julian sputtered frantically, his former Wall Street pride collapsing into pathetic pleas. As steel handcuffs clicked shut, news cameras captured every agonizing second of his arrest, broadcasting his complete ruin to millions of viewers. As federal officers dragged the screaming fraudster out through the grand concourse, the auditorium erupted into applause. Industry executives stood up to honor Maya, celebrating her extraordinary, technical, brilliant engineering mind and leadership. Standing quietly in the VIP balcony was Vince Moretti, looking extraordinarily dangerous and handsome in a dark suit. His dark eyes burned with intense, possessive devotion as he watched his queen command the respect of Manhattan. Maya held her head high, offering Vince a subtle, victorious smile before accepting the prestigious industry award. She had completely reclaimed her stolen glory, establishing herself as an unstoppable force in the automotive world. Outside the Javits Center, rain began to fall over Manhattan as news outlets reported Julian's humiliating arrest. The Wall Street Journal published a breaking headline, celebrating Maya Lin as the newly crowned Queen of Engineering. Vince walked down from the VIP balcony, wrapping his heavy arm securely around Maya's waist near her car. He leaned down, his rough thumb gently brushing her cheek as his gravelly baritone wrapped around her like velvet. "You didn't just reclaim your patents tonight, Tesoro," Vince whispered with lethal, absolute devotion against her ear. "You showed the entire world that a Moretti queen bows to no one in this city." The morning sunlight filtered beautifully through the glass domes of the Botanical Garden. $10 million had transformed the sprawling conservatory into an ethereal floral palace. Master florists decorated the soaring glass arches with thousands of rare orchids. Cascading white roses lined the grand marble walkways leading toward the central altar. Manhattan's premier 50-piece symphony orchestra played romantic classical melodies softly for guests. United States senators, foreign diplomats, and global corporate titans filled the golden seats. Every distinguished guest sat in hushed expectation for this high society wedding event. Inside her private bridal suite, Maya Lin adjusted her veil before the mirror. She smiled serenely, knowing her transformation into an untouchable queen was complete. As the heavy mahogany doors swung open, a gasp echoed through the room. Maya stepped gracefully onto the velvet aisle, wearing an exquisite custom bridal gown. The tailored silk draped her plush curves with breathtaking elegance and majestic authority. Her long silk train swept smoothly across carpeted petals with every confident step. At the far end of the aisle stood Vince Moretti in his tuxedo. His dark eyes burned with intense, fierce devotion as his bride approached him. The ruthless leader who ruled Manhattan was visibly humbled by her extraordinary beauty. He extended his heavy hand, gently wrapping calloused fingers around hers at last. Maya held her head high, standing proudly alongside the undisputed King of New York. Now listen carefully, because what happened next completely mesmerized every high society guest present. Vince retrieved a sleek custom leather case from his inner tuxedo jacket pocket. He opened the velvet lining to reveal a breathtaking 15-carat graph pink diamond ring. The flawless, cushion-cut gemstone sparkled with incredible brilliance under the bright glass dome. It represented an unmatched fortune alongside his absolute, unyielding devotion to his bride. Surrounding Wall Street elites stared in stunned silence at the priceless treasure. Vince gently took her hand, placing the glowing ring onto her finger. The rare pink diamond gleamed brilliantly against her skin under the afternoon light. Maya felt a thrill of absolute devotion wash over her in that moment. His deep, gravelly baritone resonated softly, echoing intimate warmth across the quiet altar. "This diamond is not a mere display of wealth, my love," Vince whispered. "It is the permanent symbol of your absolute authority over my entire life. You are the undisputed queen of my heart, and the Moretti Empire forever." Maya's dark eyes shone with tears of pure joy as she looked up. She recited her vows with calm confidence, stepping fully into her executive power. She promised to stand by his side as an equal ruler over Manhattan. Vince smiled with dark satisfaction, gazing into her eyes with raw reverence. Their souls were bound together in an unbreakable, dangerous covenant of supreme power. Vince leaned down, wrapping his heavy arm around her waist to pull her close. He kissed her with a slow, consuming authority that sealed their marriage bond. The packed conservatory erupted into thunderous applause for New York's ultimate power couple. Former critics and high society rivals bowed their heads in respect for their queen. Maya wrapped her arms around the Mafia Boss, kissing him back with pride. She had conquered past betrayal, destroyed her enemies, and claimed her rightful glory. No one in this city would ever dare to mock or diminish her again. She had been betrayed by a foolish man, but now ruled beside Manhattan's king. Together, they stood triumphant at the altar, ready to reign over New York forever. The golden rays of the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of crimson, amber, and purple. A luxury mega-yacht glided silently along the calm waters of the Hudson River. From the upper deck, the towering Manhattan skyline glimmered like an endless crown of glass and light. Maya Lin stood against the teak railing, her emerald silk gown fluttering gently in the evening river breeze. Vince stepped up smoothly behind her, wrapping his massive arms securely around her waist. He pulled her flush against his solid chest, resting his sharp jaw against her shoulder. His familiar, heady scent of cedarwood, rich leather, and dark tobacco enveloped her senses. Maya relaxed into his immovable grip, feeling completely protected within his dark authority. She looked down at his large, calloused hands resting possessively over her hips. She smiled softly, remembering their fateful meeting inside that rustic DUMBO workshop. He had been wearing a rugged, grease-stained leather jacket that made shallow Wall Street snobs sneer. Who could have ever guessed that a dirt-smudged mechanic controlled the entire city? "What thoughts are occupying your brilliant mind, Tesoro?" Vince murmured softly against her ear. His low, gravelly baritone sent a thrilling warmth straight down her spine. Maya turned gently within his firm hold, resting her manicured hands against his chest. "I was reflecting on the motor oil stains on your jacket," she admitted with a soft laugh. "Julian looked down on you because he was blinded by superficial status." Vince let out a dark, quiet chuckle that vibrated deep within his heavy chest. His dark eyes flared with an intense, burning devotion as he looked down. "That grease-stained jacket was my ultimate test for human character," Vince stated with calm precision. "It allowed me to discover the rare, brilliant mind hidden behind your grace." He cupped her cheek tenderly, his rough thumb stroking her soft skin. "You never bowed to their cruel insults, and you never shrank from me. You took your rightful place beside me as an equal ruler," Vince added fiercely. He leaned down, pressing his firm lips against hers with slow, consuming authority. "From Wall Street to the harbor, every shadow in New York answers to you." Maya returned his kiss with proud devotion, embracing the sweet victory of their empire. Julian Vance had arrogantly assumed Maya was ruining her future by choosing a penniless mechanic. He believed her pride would wither away quietly in a humble Brooklyn apartment. But the foolish traitor failed to realize the terrifying storm he had unleashed. He thought she was merely settling for a broke worker, but in the end, she claimed the heart and throne of the man who ruled all of New York. Did this breathless tale of dark secrets, high-stakes revenge, and ultimate mafia romance leave you completely spellbound? How satisfying was it to watch an arrogant ex-fiancé suffer complete financial and legal destruction? Maya proved that sharp intelligence, dignity, and unyielding self-worth will always crush shallow corporate cruelty. What was your favorite moment in her fierce rise to power? If this epic story kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. Do you have friends who love unstoppable heroines and possessive mafia heroes? Share this video with them immediately so they can enjoy the ultimate payback. Make sure to click the subscribe button and enable all notification alerts. Our channel delivers the most gripping, heart-pounding sagas and intense dramatic stories every week. Join our growing community today and never miss another thrilling journey of love and power.